So in this video we're going to be using Hummingbird in an interoperability workflow between Grasshopper and Revit. Now this plugin is available at Food for Rhino, which we went over earlier, and you can go to the site, search Hummingbird, you'll find it under the Grasshopper add-in section, and here you can download it for Revit 2014 to 2016. For this tutorial we're going to be using Revit 2014, but it also is the same process for 2015 and 2016. So the great thing about Hummingbird is that its functionality covers a wide variety of different family types, adaptive components, floors, grids, levels, walls, beams, etc., etc. And there's a lot that you can do. We're going to be for this tutorial looking at adaptive components, and after you install your Hummingbird download, you should have it both installed in the Grasshopper side and the Revit side. Just make sure that your both of them are, both Revit and Rhino are closed when you install. So when you open Grasshopper, you'll see that Hummingbird is available under the Extra tab here, and you'll find adaptive components, which we're going to be using here. But all the other components that you see, beams, walls, columns, etc., they all kind of work the same way, and you see these inputs here. But we're going to use adaptive components, and after we do this, you'll be able to understand the workflow for the rest of them. So I have these three curves. I'm going to use them to create a lofted surface. I'm going to make a curve component. Sorry, that's a cube component. Curve, set multiple curves, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to loft these. It's a very easy, simple surface. I'm going to turn my points on. Sorry, I hid that. Just want to be able to create some variation here. Same thing with this. Great. Alright, so I got my surface right here, and then I'm going to use another plugin, which is a great one that you can also download Food for Rhino. It's called Lunchbox. It has great panelizing tools. So I'm going to triangulate this surface using the triangulate panel tools there, our component. So after you use this triangular panel component, you'll see that on the output there are 200 trim panels, untrimmed surfaces, and from this we're going to get all of the corner points because we'll be using those to place our adaptive components when we transfer all of this into Revit. So to do this, we're going to go into the Surfaces tab, and you'll see under the Analysis drop down, you'll see Surface Points. And we're going to take these panels and connect them into the surface input. And so now that we have our points, you can hover over it and you'll see that we have 800 locally defined values, and that at each list we have 4 points. Now that's a little bit weird because what you can see is that, we have triangles, but we have 4 points. If we take a panel, take a look at those points, you can see that there's some sort of duplicates here. You could see that at index 1 and index 3 we have the same point, and that's the case for every single one of these panels. So that's because what we have coming out of our panels, lunchbox panelization component, are untrimmed surfaces. And what that means is that if you can imagine a NURB surface, I'm going to make a surface, type plane here. This NURB surface by default has 4 corner points. And if you turn on those points, what I can do is I can move that point on top of that point. And now I have a triangle. That's essentially what's happening for all of these panels. So we have 2 points that exist in the same spot. Now what we want to do, I'm going to delete that, is we want to get rid of one of these duplicates. And we can do that by using the cull duplicates component here. Now if I Control-Alt-Click, it shows me it's under the vector and point drop down. And this is a great tool because it quickly will clean any duplicates from each of those lists. So if I make another panel, so panel, take a look at that, I can see immediately any of those duplicates are gone, or taken out. It's nice and clean. So that's great. So now we have all of our points, which I want to reiterate that we want these points to be all in separate lists just like that. But we also want to kind of clean up these points in terms of its branch structure. You can see 0, semicolon, 0, semicolon, 0, and that has to do with how far down this definition that those points can be traced back. So we want to use the simplify component. We can use it like that, and now we can see the branch structure is collapsed and it's back to a single branch. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the left side there, as opposed to if I go over here, you can see that complex branch structure. Now we want to take this simplify output, and we're going to feed that into our points input on our adaptive component here. Okay, so now I have my points, and now I'm going to satisfy the rest of these inputs. So first, let's go down. Let's start at the top. The right toggle is actually a button that we're going to be using when we're ready to transfer to Revit. So we're going to make a button, put that in there, and then it's asking for a few more string inputs that describe the family name, the CSV file name, and the folder path that we're going to be using as a repository for our points that will be written to a file and then transferred into Revit. So I'm going to make a bunch of panels here. I'm going to make one. Goes into folder path. Another one that's going into CSV file name. Another one that's going into Revit family name, and I'm going to actually duplicate those two because those are going to be the same unless you have many different family types in that family. Then it will be named the same thing. So I have a family that I'm going to be using. It's called Triangle 1. This is the name of the family that you make in Revit, and I'll show you that in a second. And the CSV file name is what I'm going to name my my point list. and then the file path is where I'm going to save it. Now I have a directory here I created called Spring 2016, and I'm going to go to Properties. I'm going to copy this file location here. And I'm just going to paste that here. Okay. Actually, this is /spring 2016. Okay. Now you see this turn gray, so it's ready to go actually. If I had additional parameters to drive this adaptive component, say an opening size or whatever else my adaptive component can be driven by, I would put those in here, and we'll be doing more complex workflows that will utilize this, but for now we're just going to transfer each one of these panels into Revit. So actually now it's ready to go. I'm going to open up Revit beforehand here, and I have this ready. You see I have under my add-ins tab, I started a new project, and I have my Hummingbird add-in right here. And I'm going to look at my properties browser. I'm going to user interface, my system browser. Oh, no. It's actually my project browser, I'm sorry. And I'm going to go to I have generic model. This is my adaptive component. I'm going to edit it. I just want to show you what I'm going to be placing. So, looks like it's taking a second to open. So my adaptive component is very simple. All it is a three-pointed component which has an opening in the middle, and by default that opening size is driven by this parameter called NCP, which stands for Normalized Curve Parameter. And it's an instance parameter, so I can drive it however I want, but by default it's at 0.3. So I'm going to OK. And I would load that if I had a fresh file open, and I would load that into my project file before I did this transfer. So what I'm going to do is go back to Grasshopper, and I'm going to push this button. And there's probably a little bit of lag there, but then what I should see in my directory, now I have a CSV file. Now we're going to use this, and we can just leave it, but it'll be available to us for future use, given that we keep these two, the folder path and the file name, the same. Right, now we're ready to go into Revit, and I'm going to click this button, and this dialog pops up, and I'm going to create elements from file. Now we could go the other way. You could go export to Grasshopper and Rhino. In this case, we're going to create elements from file. And I would have to search for that file folder, but I already have it here in this path, and I can see immediately the file that I can use is available. It's trianglepoints.csv. And I'm going to create or add all new elements. If I had an existing set of elements that I've already transferred, I could keep them and I would update them if they changed position, but I'm going to add new elements. And I'm going to, if this is blank, you'll see triangle 1 there as under the drop down, so I could select it under adaptive components. And then that's it. I'm going to hit process, and then you'll see up here this will be completing all the way up to 201, and we should be able to see a result here in a minute. If my window was, if I could zoom out actually, there it is. You can see it sort of live actually placing these, which is really cool. You can get a little bit of a visualization of what's going on. So it's pretty cool. It's placing these in the columns and rows order that the panels are ordered in Grasshopper. So after that, I could, if I had other files to push, so if I had a facade screen, if I had a facade panel or a piece of structure or walls or any kind of other families that would be pushed, I could just continue to push them into the file. So I'm going to hit close. And now I'm going to select this, and you can see, there we go. My panel has been successfully placed using the list, and it gets pretty tight here on the corner for some of those panels, but overall, like, this worked out very well. Okay, so I'm going to go back here, and now if I changed something, if I moved this over here, or if I, sorry, getting mixed up, corrected this a little bit, just so that that wasn't so tight. Now let's try to update that. So what I'm going to do is then I hit this button again. That automatically updates this CSV file. And now if I go back into this, into my Hummingbird and the Revit side, I can create elements from file. I can keep elements with matching element IDs or make new element. So I should be able to update. I'm sorry, delete elements. There we go. Sorry, it was actually the third radio button. You know, you can see it's taking those element IDs that already exist and it's repositioning them. Which is pretty cool. Try not to orbit when you're in here, otherwise it will interrupt the process. There we go. So yes, it's the last one. There we go. Great. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope that was helpful. We will then eventually go over some of these other components, but you get the idea. It's pretty much the same process. You see these similar inputs: write, toggle, folder path, CSV file name. Instead of points, as this one asked for, this one's asking for curves, the type name and the wall height. So then you could imagine that this would be, if you fulfilled those, the same process as you would expect, just using some of these other families that you would create in the file. Okay.